Hi everyone, welcome back. Mother's Day is coming, and I'm going to celebrate it by remembering my mother. Her name was Violet, and she was born April 20th, 1925, which is the same birthday as Hitler, which she was tormented mercilessly when she was in school, and we were going to war in World War II. As I've mentioned, my grandmother had her at a very young age, probably 15 or 16 years old. Somewhere around about her first birthday, or maybe a little younger, she ended up being cared for by her grandmother. This would have a profound effect on my mother and my grandmother's relationship for the rest of their days. Obviously, my grandmother wasn't mentally and financially capable of taking care of a child, so she did what she thought was the best thing and what her mother had suggested: let me take care of the child. But my mother never knew that the woman she was living with was not her mother. She thought that was her mother. It was actually her grandmother. When she was 8 years old, my great-grandmother passed away. So the woman she knew as mother died. And at the funeral, she met her real mother, my grandmother. My grandmother, still not being the best mom, or not capable, or whatever the matter may have been, proceeded to let her be taken care of by other family members. She was treated like the proverbial red-headed stepchild. She was beaten, she was abused, she was ignored, she was used almost as a servant depending on the house, and this continued from 8 till she was 15 years old. Roundabout when they were 15, my grandmother and my mother moved out to Long Island, if I understand correctly, and began cohabitating. Before this, they had been living in Red Hook, Brooklyn. By this point, my grandmother had married another person. She was still an alcoholic. This person was an alcoholic. My mother was the type of person, she was outgoing, feisty. Understandably, she had to fight a lot for her own rights growing up in these various households. She had been raped when she was about 15 years old by somebody of some stature, and he basically told her, go ahead, tell the cops, nothing's going to happen because I'm like the mayor's son or something like that. And after it was done, he kicked her out of the car into the middle of nowhere, and she had to walk miles to get back home. She was also in her teens in a car accident. If I remember correctly, it was snowing. They were having a lovely time. They probably were drinking. She was ejected through the windshield, broke both her legs. And at the time, they told her that she would never walk again. But one of her doctors said, no. You're going to walk. I'm going to make you walk. And so he forced her to go through whatever the rehab was at the time, and he made her walk every day on crutches and, do proper rehab. But he warned her that at some point in time, her legs would probably give out. Could be 20, could be 30, could be 40 years down the road. She also had her appendix taken out. This is when she still lived in the city. I think she still lived in the city. She talked about being on the subway. She was on the subway, coming home from a steak dinner, had a good night out on a date, and she doubled over in pain. Her appendix burst. They had to carry her off the subway, which even in this day and age is a nightmare. I can't imagine what it was like this is probably the 40s. She never finished high school. She had to go to work from the 8th grade on. She regretted that because she loved learning. So she may have been an 8th grade education, but she voraciously read to the end of her days until she couldn't. I had a complicated relationship with her, and I'll go into that later when we get to when I'm born, which wasn't until she was about 37, 38 years old. She worked in various jobs. Jobs she preferred that she enjoyed was she was not a seamstress. I don't know what they called it back then. She did piecework, and you basically, the quicker you were, you got paid by the piece. And she loved sewing, so that was one of the things she enjoyed doing. She also worked as the equivalent of a nurse's aide or a home at the time, and she worked in nursing homes, and that put a fear that she never wanted to go into a nursing home. They were nightmares. She would never want to go there. She remained single up until she finally got with my father, which again was not until the late 50s. But she was very open-minded in her opinions on, she was very not conservative at all, even in the time period she was brought up in. She kind of believed in you're with whoever you want to. She believed in she could do whatever she wanted. That may have been, obviously, she must have had a lot of mental and obviously she had mental, physical, psychological trauma, and maybe her freedom per se to just hang out in the bar, see a guy, hey, let's go home. So she was, I guess you could call barfly when she was younger. She partied hard, she worked hard, so forth and so on. Like I said, she moved in with my grandmother, and I told the incident about the gentleman, the second husband that she tried to be rid of. My mother was the one who stopped her from put the fire out in the bed so that who she knew as her father, well, not really, she knew that wasn't really her blood father, but at this point in time he was considered her father, that he didn't die. So that was it. She told tales of how when it was time, when we were in war, during World War II, that she would make sure she'd give the soldiers going off to war a good time. And I guess she did this a lot. And this was a point of me being embarrassed by her many times as I was a child. Not that I was that conservative. I mean, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, but it was like that she would talk about these things publicly, saying that, one time she went to bed with a guy just because she liked his shirt, and at the end of the night, at the end of the thing, it was almost like a transaction. She's like, good, we had a good time, give you your shirt, I want it. It was that kind of I don't know what you want to call it, uniqueness about her that always made me kind of like, oh my God, why does she have to say this? Why is she saying these things? Now, I heard these tales very young. I mean, these things went back, wow, way, way, way back. So it was always a little like, oh my God, does she have to be talking about that again? Oh my God. She didn't have a filter. She wasn't, she may have been vulgar and spoke like a truck driver, but she wouldn't just curse you out and that kind of thing. She was just very colorful in her descriptions. But like I said, she was an alcoholic. That's how she met my father. She would be coming out of a bar and he'd be coming into a bar. Again, he was also an alcoholic. So that's how they kept running into each other. And they finally decided, well, my mother noticed him because on Lily White, Long Island, a man with kind of Asian-like features, even with a tan, stood out. And she always liked Asian men. She always found them extremely attractive. So eventually they hooked up. This was about 5 years before I was born. So that would make that 57, 58. She had 3 miscarriages before I was born. One was, she was 8 months pregnant. She was carrying a big thing of laundry down the stairs and she fell. Another one was a car accident that my father and her were in, and she had another miscarriage. And I think there was another, and she had a stillbirth. And that would have been my brother had he lived. The cord wrapped around his neck and he was born dead. And that was about 5 years before I was born. So that was when they first hooked together. So eventually, in May 1963, I was born. I'm a little confused on the date. She said she was 38 years old. If we go by paperwork, she may have been 36, 37, so I'm not quite sure who's telling the truth on the dates. But so she had me very late in life, and just a thing, she was also 3 years older than my father. So I'm going to wrap this up for this part of it, and we'll go into more about their life together. I want to thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.